Hi and welcome to yet another module in the online teacher education program. So far we have covered aims and objectives. Before that we had introduction to the training program. Then we had teacher or a mentor. What is the role of a teacher and what is the role of a mentor and how you need to transform yourself from a teacher to a mentor. Continuation in that, now the series would start and we would be discussing on holistic approach of education. This would be a set, four episodes, about 30 to 40 minutes of each episode. This module, four modules rather, would cover holistic education, a holistic approach to education. The first two would be starting today, the first one, the second one would come to you after this. And then the next two, we would be covering it, we would be discussing in continuation of holistic approach to education after we understand lesson planning. And each module, as usual, will have an assignment which you need to complete it by the deadline. That would either be in the form of a Google form or it would probably be a written work, or it can also be a oral audio recording assignment. So let's move to understand the holistic approach. The learning objective with these four modules, the purpose of adding this into this training program, the topic, the reason why we included this, the learning outcome would be you will be able to understand what is holistic approach of education in the first two modules and the two modules which would come after the lesson plan. This would be the first learning objective for us, that you understand what exactly means when we talk about holistic approach of education and when we talk about all-round development of a child. What are the different areas which you need to concentrate when we are talking about all-round development of a child? And the second learning outcome in this module would be, how would you, after understanding the concept of holistic approach of education, how would you go back into the classroom and then implement or practice this approach? Because learning and ending at that stage doesn't serve a purpose for a teacher. Only when the teacher gets back into the classroom and then practices it, implements it in the classroom, and when the child is able to understand, and when you see an all-round development in the child, that means your approach towards holistic education, your approach to make him the best in every area, whether it is physical, cognitive, or emotional, socio-emotional, spiritual, that means then you have achieved. So that would be the second learning objective for us. And I hope, if you are not able to understand the holistic approach of education in these four modules, after spending almost over 2 to 2.5 hours, then the purpose would not be served. And then you will not be able to go back into the classroom and then practice it. So I request you to listen to these videos very carefully, because we would not only be discussing the concept, we would also be discussing how you would go back into the classroom and practice it practically. So practically we would be giving you ideas on how you could implement this in the classroom. So let us see how we take it forward. Before we understand the definition for holistic approach of education, or we understand the concept, I would like to give you some information related to this. Holistic approach of education has been there for ages, I would rather say. And slowly academicians, schools, managements move towards more or probably core academic concepts. Especially in the last 2-3 decades, the core area where a school or a school management or the teachers were working was away something different from holistic education. The discussions have been there. There have been long debates on the importance of holistic education, and some schools in the country and most of the schools out of the country continued adapting or continued with the process of holistic approach of education. But now the discussions have become more important. People have started discussing it. Debates are happening. And the reason for this is last year the government, the HRD government, brought in the new education policy. We all know that. And this education policy talks more about holistic education, a holistic approach of education. The education sector or the panelist and national education policy gave more importance or has given more importance to holistic approach of education. I am very glad that this has come, and now we would have to wait and see how strictly this would be implemented across the schools in the country. Now, once the national education policy has brought in this concept and the discussions, the debates are happening, it becomes a bigger responsibility, or the teachers will now have a bigger role to play, because every school in the country would have to follow the national education policy. And since it is given more importance, now our responsibility as a teacher gets doubled up, and we have to start working, implementing it in the classroom. Not only understanding the concept, but inculcating or you being a role model in the classroom. Because as a teacher, we all have to understand this concept very clearly, get to know every detail on how an holistic approach of education can be practiced in the classroom. After that, it becomes our responsibility to get into the classroom and make sure that We inculcate certain values, spiritualism, social emotional skills, the different aspects under holistic approach of education in the classroom among the children, so that there would be an all-round development in the child. Not only national education policy, that is our country, has given it importance, but the other countries also have started trying to give more importance to it, and most of the countries have also already started practicing it into the classroom. The European countries, a few countries on the eastern part of the Asia, all these countries have started implementing this in their classroom. How they are doing it, we'll come back to that. But let us first try to understand the importance, or before that, let us try to understand the definition and the meaning for holistic approach of education. The simplest definition for this, because as I mentioned in my previous module, that definitions only make us understand. So again, the definition for holistic approach of education in simplest words, if I put it across, education of heart and mind, or you frame it in other way around, education of mind and the heart. So this definition would be simple, and I hope you have understood the basics of it. Now we'll try to see how and this can be practiced back in the class. There's another definition to this. We all, the teachers who have done B.Ed and the teachers who have studied child psychology, you would have come across a very famous psychologist, educationist, who gave us various theories on child psychology, Mr. Benjamin Bloom. He puts holistic approach of education, the definition for this in this way. He says education. He is also given a famous theory which we call it as Bloom's taxonomy, on how children understand and what are the different stages, which we will be discussing in the child psychology class. But for now, let us see what he is trying and how he is trying to define holistic approach of education. He refers to a holistic approach of education with 3H. The first one being the head, hands, and heart. The 3H. So it is the mind, that is the head, the hands, which we have, and then the heart. When I gave you the definition, it didn't cover hand. I only said the head and the heart, that is the mind and the heart. Because what we thought was, when you understand something, when you get emotionally attached to some concept, or when you feel that, okay, this has to be done, then automatically hands would come into the place, because we work and we do a lot of things. Practically, when we want to do something, it's more that we use our hands. So hands automatically come into the definition. And that is the reason why in the first statement I said holistic approach of education is a study of head, and the heart, whereas Benjamin Bloom refers to this definition as study of head, hands, and heart. If you look at the definition and if you see the present concept in the schools, holistic approach of education is the education of head and the heart. Benjamin Bloom gives 3H: head, hands, and heart. But when you walk into the schools, as a parent, as a teacher, as an educationist, there's only one H, and that is head. Schools are concentrating more on the academics, and academics in a way that they put everything into the head. It's basically memory, memorization, or a rote learning, which we call, and work in such a way that the child has to know everything. It's just like giving information to the children. Whether they have understood or not, whether they like it or not, you just give it to them. A child who is not interested in mathematics, forcefully we teach him mathematics. I understand basic mathematics is required, but do you forcefully teach him something which he is not interested in? Probably he is good at fine arts. Why don't we encourage these children to do better in fine arts? And believe me, fine arts is not a subject which, you know, you look at it and say, are you doing fine arts? It has got equal importance, and at times I would say it is better than being an engineer. We do need different professions. We do need different professionals, but doesn't mean that I kill the creativity of a child and make him the best mathematician. It doesn't serve a purpose as a teacher. It should not serve the purpose of a teacher. So today the education has become only of head. It's just like you connect a pen drive to a laptop and transfer the entire information which is there on your laptop into the pen drive. The pen drive is again connected and then it is again transformed. The child transfers it into his system or his laptop or his mobile phone. So we put the entire information into the head of the child into the classroom. We insist on rote learning, and then after a month, after 3 months, nowadays it's every day. There's a test paper which is given, and these memory skills are tested. How much is he able to remember what I did in my class? That has become more important. So children have actually become pen drives. The teachers transfer everything into the pen drive. The parents transfer everything into the pen drive. We are not bothered whether the child has understood the concept or not, whether he knows how to practically use it in his life. Education is for life. Education is not for earning. Yes, it plays an important role when we start working and we need money, I do understand. But it is not the whole part. It's a part of it. Education should be for life. And that is what holistic approach of education tells us. As I mentioned, the pen drive example, students are motivated towards scoring high marks. I've seen at times a lot of students come back to me and say, "Sir, I was supposed to get 100%, but I've got 95%, sir. I'm not very happy with this." Can you imagine 95% a child scores and still not being happy? Because there's a tremendous pressure out in the society. Every day, the mother, the father continuously, this is like a mantra, it is put into the head of the child that you have to score 100%, you have to get better marks. There's another statement, you need to get better marks than the other girl, the other boy, the neighbor, my friend's son. Comparison. And this clearly shows how selfish we are. I have to be the best, and I have to be better than what my neighbor is. This is a race which we are pushing our children into, this race, and we expect the child to be first. We don't expect the child to be in number two position also. We don't want to see the child in number two position. We always want to see the child only at number one. Can you imagine the kind of pressure the child is having? It's not an easy job. I would like to ask the parents. I tell this to the parents. You want your child to score 95%. What was your percentage? Suddenly the statement changes. No, no, that those days were different and that my situation was different. How? Why? Why? Suddenly how the situation has got changed. We have changed the situation. We as parents, we as teachers, we as school managements have changed the situation, and we insist that our school gets the maximum number of 9.8 GPAs or 10 GPAs. I was just reading an article yesterday after the results of ICSE and the ISC. I was really surprised. 100%. I mean, everybody passed out. Of course, it's a COVID batch, and I think the CBSE has sent back the marks submitted by the schools to look into it again, because they were not very happy, because the marks showed the children are doing exceptionally well, and not only a small section, a percentage, but entire school children were doing exceptionally well. How come? How is this possible? How is this possible? Because each child is different. I'm not saying that the children should not do well, they should not score high marks, but all of a sudden, the school's results are showing 100%. And this, they make it as a brand. What do? They take this as an opportunity and say, I've seen schools putting up huge cutouts, huge billboards with the student's photograph, and below that there is a name of the photograph. I mean, the percentage the child is achieved. Do you ever imagine what is happening to the child whose photograph is not there on that billboard? You put 10 children's photograph there, and what is happening to the remaining 90 students in the school? You have 100 students, and those 10 students there on the board, and the remaining 90 are not there on the board. What would happen to those 90 students? How many would continue the studies? How many would really get flourished in the field, different fields? Most of them would get dejected, depressed, and totally they would stop studying. You are actually pushing a large number of students as a teacher into a dark tunnel. And there are suicides also, my dear teachers. And who is responsible for this? Students are not responsible, whereas the responsible people behind this is the parent and the teachers, because we are running a race of marks. And this is the education of mind. We need to understand there are different definitions for holistic approach of education. But the most common definition which most of the psychologists, educationists talk about is education which will develop behavior, which will develop characteristics of the children. 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, a plus b is equal to whole square, a noun is a name of a place. There are 8 planets, there are 9 planets. Now there are 8 planets. The planets are revolving around the sun. This is available everywhere today. You and I don't have to teach. So most of the educationists and psychologists feel that today the most important aspect which needs to be covered in a classroom or concentrate on this aspect is the value education or the moral building of a child, the character building of a child, which becomes more important. If you look into the old education system, this is what used to happen. The schools were different. The schools were totally different. Why can't we work for a year or 2 years in the initial stage of their child's life of education or the child's education life? Why can't we work on building their characteristics rather than teaching ABCDs and 1, 2, 3, 4s? So moral education has to be the top priority. And this is what holistic education talks about. And this is what I had also mentioned in my aims and objectives of the first module which was sent to you. The purpose of creation of a human being. And we also spoke about the concept of how important it is through education. If I'm educated and if I don't know where to throw my dust, if I'm educated and I don't know where to throw my wrapper after I eat a toffee, what is the purpose of learning? What is the purpose of seeking knowledge? There's no difference. There's no difference. An uneducated also knows that, does the same thing, and I also does the same. I also do the same thing. And the uneducated also knows that I should not cheat, I should not lie. I also know that I should not cheat, I should not lie, but I am doing it. Both are doing. And this doesn't make us superior. Among all the creations, we know that human being is the most superior creation of the Creator. If you want your children to be superior superior creations, then we need to inculcate values in them. We make sure that they inculcate, they practice, it should become a habit for them. And when do they become? As I just gave you an example, if you are a topmost scientist and if you are a topmost doctor and if you don't know how to talk to your patients, you're a topmost engineer and you're constructing a building and you're disturbing the whole environment. That is what we are doing. We're building concrete buildings across and we're disturbing the entire environment. Sometime back I had seen an engineer who built a house in Hyderabad. There was a tree which was in the site. I really loved it. He did not even cut a branch of a tree. The tree was retained as it is and he built a house around it. I appreciate that. To achieve something, we are actually trying to destroy something. And then we struggle and we run pillar to post to get oxygen. So if you don't teach your children, if I don't teach my children the care which is required for environment, the care which is required to be taken for animals, the care which is required to be taken for parents, then how can he become a superior creation? So the Creator's creation had a purpose, and the scholars also talk about the moral education which becomes more important. We are forgetting there is a teacher beyond us. The greatest teacher is the Creator. And He has all the time, right from the first creation of human being till to date, He has sent us guidances. A lot of educationists, a lot of scholars, before there were a lot of prophets who came, who guided us. Even today, when you see role models like APJ Abdul Kalam, if you see role models like Radha Krishna, they all started from a humble beginning. And why did they become a superior creation? Because they had those values in them. And those values gave them that lift to become the best creation, and they really did something for the society. We have all become selfish. It's a selfie world. I mean to say, we are so selfish that we only take care and we only look at what we want to achieve and what we want to do. That is our education of mind. But whereas all these role models, all the prophets, all the scholars, the great scholars we have, and even the today modern day great personalities like APJ Abdul Kalam, or you talk about Sarvepalli Radhakrishna, you talk about Allama Iqbal, you talk about Rabindranath Tagore, these people demonstrated how they are superior creations. And that is actually the education of heart, the second H. Now these leaders who came before us, they demonstrated. And let me tell you something very interesting. The social skills which I was talking about, the social skills are actually built in every human being. Nobody would teach us how to love. We learn it probably seeing our parents loving the children, the love in the family, the caring attitude in the family. Nobody would teach us how to make friends. We start liking a classmate in the school who comes, who goes back, we see him, we approach, we become friends, and this friendship continues for years and years and years. So the social skills are actually the Creator has put already inside our system. We have feelings. For example, as I just said, a person who is not educated, he need not do a PhD to understand that he should not lie. It is an inbuilt into a system, and his common sense tells him that he should not lie. And we also have something called empathic, being empathetic, understanding the other person's feeling. Or rather, I would say you put yourself into that person's shoes and see how he is feeling when he's lost somebody in his family. You will not even be able to understand how happy he is when he's achieved something. whether it is a happy environment or a sad environment, we can't feel the other person. But being empathetic and being around with him is a skill which we need to learn. Today we are not. We have become so selfish. We don't even care and we don't even bother. And pandemic is added to that. And we feel that if we visit somebody who's got COVID-19, probably I would not leave and I would die soon. There are precautions which can be taken. How are the doctors treating this pandemic patients? Are they not human beings? Is there a difference between your creation and his creation, a doctor's creation? No. They take precautions and they make sure that if they had not been treating the pandemic patients since March 21st when it got boomed, imagine how many dead bodies would have been lying in the country. The social skills, the empathic skills are actually built in. We need to feel it and we need to make sure that we care for them, care for people around us, care for the society. Caring for the society in the sense, or it's not that, okay, I love everybody around me. This, it's a different, love is different and caring is different. How much of water do we waste? If we have to drink, we know that we need to drink water. We pour a full glass of water and we drink half and the remaining half is thrown. Have you ever wondered people struggling for water across the world? Electricity. We sit down and do our work. The minute we finish our work, I've seen a lot of teachers. The minute the class is up, they pick up the bag and they rush. They want to go back home. The lights are on, the fan is on. Now there is another person, the support staff. As she is walking, I have seen a support staff switching it off. She is not educated. An educated person left the fan on, and an uneducated person has to clean the room and has to switch off the lights and the fans. Is it not the responsibility of a teacher or an educated person to make sure that he or she saves something for the future? Remember, we are not saving for the future children. We have borrowed from the future children, whatever we are using. It is their property and we have borrowed it from them. Plastic bags. We walk into a shop and the minute he tries to give something and we buy something, he puts it in a plastic bag. We happily take it and come back home. How many times have you told them, I don't need a plastic bag? How many of our schools in the country has a board at the gate saying that we don't allow plastics? And in today's world, we know in the last 1.5 years, the government has been giving, the minute I call up somebody, the very first message I get is, please maintain social distance. Do not go outside. But the minute the lockdown is open, everybody is in the amusement parks, they are in the beaches, they are on the riversides. Why do we have to do this? Because we don't care for the society. We don't care for the society. When you teach children to do all these things and when you yourself try to inculcate these habits inside you as a teacher, as a human being, then you are actually educating the heart. As I just mentioned, the social skills which are important. The Creator has already put this. It is a natural inbuilt into the system that a human being automatically picks all the social skills. And some of the skills, social skills which are required, the society would teach us. The society we would live in would teach us, and then we become a social personality. And that is actually a teacher's job, that he educate the heart. There were two famous psychologists, educationists, I would call professors, top professors working in Harvard University, business university. One was Timothy and the other was Mr. Butler. They worked as consultants and they worked in shaping the characteristics of the top people in the company. They trained the top executives, the CEOs, the presidents, the vice presidents, and the top executives of the top companies for almost a decade. They have written a book, a very interesting book. If you get this, you should read it. The book name is 12 Bad Habits Which Keep Good People Back. 12 Bad Habits. Stephen Covey had written 7 Habits for Highly Successful People. Mr. Timothy and Butler had written a book called 12 Bad Habits Which Keep Good People Back. And what are those 12 bad habits? All the 12 bad habits, I am not going in detail, all the 12 bad habits are connected with social skills. They failed sitting at the top position because they didn't have good social skills. Top qualifications they had the best education, they had the top degrees and qualification certificates from the top universities of the world, and they got into that position, but they couldn't stay there for a longer time. The only reason was because they didn't had the right social skills which are required for a person, and they failed and they had to step down. So these 12 habits, what are those 12 habits? One or two I would like to put it here, across here is the top person in the company didn't know how to behave with his subordinates. He was not empathetic towards the problems, the issues which his staff or people working with him had. He didn't care for their problems. He didn't care for their life. He didn't care for anything with them. It was only work which was important for him. So these social skills, like I just mentioned, if you have the best certifications, you have done your medicine from the top university of the world, you are an MBBS, MD, FRCS, you have done a PhD, and if you have done your MBA and you get a top position in the company, and if you don't have social skills, the education doesn't have a purpose. It doesn't have a purpose. Education today is become for living. Any parent I ask, I want my son to do engineering and get a nice job in a corporate company, and then in a corporate company and then get a job on about 5 to 6 lakhs per annum minimum. Maximum can go up to 1 crore per annum. I would look for a nice girl for him, get him married. My job is done. Your job is not done. If your son is cheating the world, if your son is behaving not like a human being, animals also leave. I'm sorry to say, animals also leave. We also leave. But if my life is not serving the purpose of my creation, and if my life is not beneficial for the society, there's no difference between me and animal. So if my son and if my children and if your children are not serving the purpose of the creation and not being beneficial for the society, What was the need for APJ to invent a very small instrument which could be fixed into the heart at a very low cost price? Why did he do that? He could have created it, invented it, he could have sold it at the top price, and you could have become the richest person on the earth, because every other person is probably getting the heart disease. He thought about the society. He said, I should make this so that it is available at a very low cost price to every person on the earth. His, his education served a purpose. And you see today how many of them are getting benefited with that strength. So education is not for living, education has to be for life. Now this is what exactly the National Education Policy has brought in. They define this as sustainable growth. A very simple word, two-word statement. It says the education policy talks about sustainable growth. And what is sustainable growth? Sustainable growth is how well we use our resources which are available, the natural resources which are available. I just mentioned this. We have borrowed the natural resources from the next coming generation. We are not leaving it for them. We have borrowed it from them. And when you borrow something, how important it becomes. When you borrow something, you are always worried that I should return back. You borrow a pen from somebody and you're worried, yes, I should give back this pen safely to my friend because I borrowed it. You borrow a car from him and you make sure that you drive it safely and you give it back. So when we have borrowed the natural resources, we preserve it safely and we give it back to our children. That is actually the sustainable growth. And this is actually the study of heart. I should know that I do not waste anything. If I waste water, I'll have a problem with electricity. If I waste water, I would not get water to drink. You will not believe there are still people walking 5 to 6 kilometers to get one pile of water. And national education policy has defined this, and it is our responsibility that we practice this. Timothy and Dalton from Harvard University also, they have very clearly defined this, and they say that these values can be inculcated in children only before they are 10 years. The minute they cross that 10 years, 11 years, it's very difficult to put it across here. So it is a responsibility. So we are the teachers who are doing teaching in the foundation years. It becomes your responsibility and my responsibility to make sure that we inculcate all those values before they cross 10 years. And this should be the purpose of education, and this is the education of heart. Now, once the national education policy has been brought, now the national curriculum framework will be revived. Let us also see that at different stages whenever the national education policy has been revived. The first time when it came in 1952, then it came in 1968, then it came in 1986, then in 1992, then it came in 2005, and then now recently in the year 2020. And all these at different stages whenever the national education policy was revived or framed, character building and moral education has been a priority. But now it has been given the top priority. And now when the education curriculum framework is framed, the moral values in the recent education policy, the, the policy says that the moral values would be taken from the Constitution of India. And we all know what is the Constitution of India. The characters which would be taken, the characteristics which need to be built among the children, what are those characteristics and from where will they draw this? They would be drawing these characteristics from the Constitution of India. And what does the Constitution of India define? There's no difference between the Constitution of Indian, the values and the characters defined in the Constitution of India from the values and characters defined in the universal law across the globe, or even the laws which has come to us, natural laws which have been sent, which have been given by the Creator to us from time to time. What does we all talk about? What does the universal law talk about? It talks about peace education, and Constitution of India also talks about peace education. It teaches us that we need to coexist. We have to learn living together, irrespective of the caste, creed, and gender, the religion. We need to live together as one human being. Because remember, we all came from one person. We didn't have different tribes. We came from one particular tribe, that is human being. That is what Rabindranath Tagore also spoke about, the universal brotherhood. We are all one. And when we say we are all one, we need to teach our children to coexist. We need to teach our children to lead the life in peace. We need to teach our children to respect every person around him, irrespective of the religion. It doesn't matter what religion my neighbor is following, but for me, that neighbor is more important. And when he is not well, I need to make sure that I care for him. I help him. Do I disown him because he is not well? Do I disown him because he is poor? No, we need to teach our children that every human being is same as I am or as you are. The morality education is nothing but the education of heart. And remember, this is coming from the Constitution. This is not coming from Umri, or this is not coming from the panelists who designed the national education policy. But it is coming from the Constitution, and Constitution was not designed by some person sitting somewhere. It was designed by intellectuals who thought about the society, who gave importance to the society. And if we could bring that into the classroom, we would be doing a lot of justice as a teacher. This is what I have for you in this module. We will continue with this in the next module on the holistic approach of education in our next module. So I hope you would try to understand the definition and try to get to the concept of holistic education. Listen to this video again and again and see that you get a clear picture of what holistic education, approach of education is all about. Thank you, dear teachers.